tai tiesiog gali paimti.
Tai tu gali tiesiog eiti ir va tokį
paimti kamerą
ir būt su juo. O mes išsigerėsim, kas lieka.
Aš siūlau pradėti, jums paskui išleis natūraliai, nes laiko tikrai ne tiek daug. Nes 12 mūsų lauks jau.
Tai mes tada arčiau susibūrėm visi, kad nebūtų tokio.
Ты šitą padėk po tam, turi tą kamerą.
Mes su mikrofonu stovėjome.
Geriau, ne? Ai, nu tai tada aš atsiprašau.
Tai ką, sėdam ir žiūrim, galima šalia, gali ir paskui pasakyti.
Daug eina pasitikti, tas šviesą matai ten duoda.
Susijausis, kad netgi labiau šitą pusę visiems. Tada ir jūs gal elektroniką tada sėskarčiau. Tai mes visi labiau šitą pusę.
Prašau.
Alio?
Su mikrofonu. Dar arčiau.
Man nepatinka taip tiesiai, man nori šiek tiek kampu. Labai nepatinka šitą pusę.
Jeigu kas nors čia klausia, dar klausimas netušia, tada...
Nu kažkaip žiūri keistai tiesiai, norėtus biški šonu.
Tai gerai, tada šitaip, o tu tada vaikščiok ir būk ir atsisėsk ir va čia žiūrėk, iš čia gal. Ne, nesvarbu, tu jau sėsk čia su kamera, viskas. Sėsk, tu su šitą kamerą jau eik ten filmuok, o čia... Čia sėsk su kameru. One hour team member is joining.
The last one.
We were supposed like 2 meet of everybody. I want also yellow. You see, it's so exciting for us because you are the person who is already doing something what we are just dreaming or planning or having in our dreams, and you come to Lithuania and you're already talking that you have this already in politics. So this is like politics, and this is like really big wow for us. And you are like kind of like a miracle for us.
Everything begins with a dream.
So you are our inspiration because you...
I think inspiration is mutual. Yes, you inspire me, perhaps Butano inspires me in some ways. Yes, indeed. I think this inspiration is mutual in the sense that we all want the best for our children. And our children's children. Yes. We share this planet Earth with so many other co-inhabitants, other human beings, animals, plants, birds, reptiles, insects. So many different types of life forms that share this planet Earth. And we're just part of the big ecosystem, the big macrocosm in which we are small microcosms. And it's important that we talk about issues that concern not only us, the human beings, but also planet Earth for mutual survival and mutual flourishing.
So maybe in the beginning we will introduce ourselves.
Monica,
so you will know who we are. And these are this bunch of strangers.
Yes,
like,
indeed.
And how we came together. What is our main interest? So we are actually the group of people who are saving here. A group of people, a movement actually in Lithuania, which started 1 year ago with saving our forests, because we noticed what happening something not right, and we felt it. So it started through the forest watch and forest saving, this kind of movement for the nature, for the live nature, and so now it's moving forward, and we are looking that it's not only about forest, that it's about bigger vision. The forest is showing us just one part of the...
Yeah.
So we are actually forest savers, activists, and this movement now, and a live forest called this movement, green and life, a live forest. So, and we are creating through saving forest, we are on the process, but the forest is asking what is the vision actually, how we live, what is our country's vision, how we use our nature and relationships. So with the main goal to restore the social and ecological this balance. So we are looking the way how to restore this balance, and so your way, the Bhutan way, is this inspiration actually. That's why we are very happy today to hear and exchange.
Because we were forced to start this movement because we have this controversial like forest reform which allows like big corporations to enter our forest and cut like old forest, old growth forest especially.
Yeah,
especially and in general, like you can sense like the whole politics is all about resources, collecting and everything, and we feel it's like really a time just for citizens themselves to stand up and to say no and to push it and to push like new politics regarding our land and
So wonderful.
because it's like part of our identity, the nature.
Yes.
And then as we feel like you and Bhutan and Lithuania has this in common because we have very old roots,
Yes.
which are like really, really connected to earth and all the live beings. And your philosophy, life philosophy, like green philosophy, it's something which is forgotten here. And we think that's maybe one of the reasons you're here, to remind us and talk about these like old truths, which are here like really manipulated. Like for example, the word green. In the Western society, it's like greenwashing now. And you talked a lot about the green philosophy, and in the Western philosophy, it's like very manipulated, and they say green, but it's not what they mean, what it not really means. And what we really need to remind people and talk people about what is green in its core, like what is all about. How do you like recognize? How do you know the difference? Like how do you, when somebody says green, we are green, we are doing this green, how do we recognize? And like we have to go to the core of this green, because in Lithuania the word green, like a lot of like political parties say we are green, and like oh this food is green, but it's not green. And can you just like decode this word for us, like to like really decode?
Oh, thank you so much indeed. It's such joy for me to be able to meet all of you, friends of the earth, friends of forests, friends of our natural environment. I think we are doing such a commendable job in honor of the forests, in honor of the environment, in honor of life, as a matter of fact. Coming here, I see that Lithuania as a whole has done a wonderful job in keeping the country green. This must be among the greenest countries in the region. I've been traveling with my colleague, fellow Bhutanese, Dr. Darius, for several days now, and we drive miles after miles, and there are standing trees still on both sides of the road, wide open fields and deep forests all around. So it's a comment on the vision and the wisdom of the Lithuanian people down the years. The government, the citizens, all together, I think, have come together to keep your country green. And green, in our context, is not only a color. Green is an attitude of mind. Green is a responsibility. Green is a plea for sustainability. Because as we look around, the quantity of forest felled every year is absolutely alarming. At the current rate of 7.3 million hectares cleared of the forest around the world, in something like 100 years, there may be no standing forest left in the world. And there couldn't be anything more tragic than that. So that is the reason why people all over the world, in countries, in little communities, as individuals, have to do their part to save the integrity of planet Earth, to make the future sustainable, so that both the human beings as well as planet Earth survive, not only survive but flourish for years to come. Because there is a temptation to develop, and development, while it is dramatic, while it is needed, while it may be legitimate, also comes at a cost. And when cities expand, when construction happens at an indiscriminate rate to increase gross domestic product revenue, there are also other costs which may not be calculated, which may not be measured, but which have deep implications, far-reaching implications on the quality of our life. When trees are cut down, it is not the standing trees alone that disappear, but together with them the forest disappears. And the forest is home to so many different kinds of life forms. Animals live there, birds live there, reptiles. Uncountable, infinite variety of life forms make the forest their home. And when we destroy the forest, when we cut down trees, so much of life form gets decimated, destroyed. And when there is this kind of a destruction, mindless, unchecked destruction of the forest, there are also these unintended consequences that come, and these consequences could be extremely expensive, extremely costly. So I think what you're doing together with your government is something that is very commendable, and I wish that you continue doing what you're doing. It is not only for individuals and little communities, but everybody has a stake in the environment. Everybody has a stake in the quality and the integrity of our natural environment. We all need the blessings of our planet Earth, the soil on which we walk. We need the blessings of the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, the oxygen that comes from the forest, from plants. All these are absolutely precious for life to survive. And if we do not take care now of these vital, life-giving elements, a time could come when life could be unlivable. And already we have seen the amount of pollution, emission of greenhouse gases all over the world at a rate that is in fact inestimable. And if things go the way they are going, a time could come when life could seriously be affected, as it is already being done now. So that's why I think it is not only on behalf of the forest alone that we have to work. We have to work on behalf of life and the survival of this planet Earth, of which we are an important part.
And how do you feel like in this world, which like you just talked about, and you are like having this different policy? Like, don't you feel like an outsider on this earth? And like, does it feel like safe? Like, how do you feel? Like, for example, you have this politics, like thinking about this thing and where philosophy
What
and
gives
all
the
this
foundation
destruction
of
is.
this belief system?
Yes, I think we have seen, I think humanity is learning some hard lessons. The human race is learning some hard lessons all around the world. And it is good news, because people around the world now are coming to realize that the resources of this planet Earth are limited and finite, and if our exploitative nature remains the way it is, if our wants remain infinite, against the finite resources of this planet Earth, life will not be able to survive. So a time will come when things will collapse. So the good news is that there are many people around the world who are becoming more and more conscious of the need to preserve the sanctity of planet Earth, the sanctity of the elements of planet Earth, and movements like yours, activities like yours, green movements around the world, not only as a fad, but as a responsibility, would actually go a long way in restoring the integrity of planet Earth, in restoring the integrity of our environment. In Bhutan, we have been very fortunate in having very wise leadership. Our kings have been, in fact, very visionary and wise in terms of ensuring that the natural gifts of planet Earth, our natural habitat, is preserved and conserved for succeeding generations of our Bhutanese people. The Constitution of Bhutan stipulates that at least 60% of the country remain under forest cover for all times to come. At the moment, it's something like 70% plus. So, if we consciously continue this policy and practice of keeping our country green, I think we will go a long way and the country will be able to achieve development that is sustainable. The temptation would be to increase per capita income, economic wealth, revenue in all countries. But if we use up, exploit resources today, we'll be able to increase per capita income, gross domestic product very quickly. Overnight, gross domestic product can be doubled, tripled, or quadrupled. But what will be left for future generations? Nothing will be left for our children and their children's children and their children. That is why, even though we are not economically as developed as other countries are, still our kings knew our priorities. Our kings knew our nation's priorities and the aspirations of our people. That is why, even though it takes a lot of moderation, a lot of mindful planning and control, self-restraint, not to exploit what is tempting to exploit for the sake of economic gain, but to preserve and keep something for future generations, because it will be extremely selfish and irresponsible to use up everything for this generation and leave nothing for future generations. That's why in Bhutan we have this very wise policy as articulated by our kings that keeps the country as green as we want it to be. Bhutan is at the moment Bhutan is supposed to be one of the 10 biodiversity hotspots in the world. Even though the per capita land in fact is rather limited, however, in a small area the density of life forms is very high. We have some of the most rare and endangered animal species, bird species, and other life forms. And we would like Bhutan to continue being home to some of these endangered species, rare species of life forms. And in Bhutan, we look at the forest and the natural environment not only as a physical quantity. It is more than a physical material quantity out there for exploitation, for using the way we want, as and when we want it. We have a very deep reverence for our trees, for our mountains, for our valleys, our water bodies, rocks, as well as everything that nature provides. Because we believe that these different elements of nature are home to different kinds of life forms. Gods and goddesses, deities, spirits make the natural environment their home. So we co-inhabit the natural environment together with so many other life forms. So it would be quite arrogant and unwise to claim that this planet Earth is only for us to live in, and only for us to use up the way we want it. So what is important, I believe, is a very deep and conscious relationship of mutual support. We look after the planet Earth, we look after the natural environment, and planet Earth, the natural environment, will look after us. So we flourish and succeed together, human beings and planet Earth.
And maybe you have an advice for us. So let's imagine you have a real political power to change things, and what do we have to do first? How do we start?
To get
Let's
to a
say,
breaking point, yes, of human consciousness.
what do we do first? Let's say we have a power. Where do we start? Top 3 things, top priorities. Top priorities or top 3 things we should start with.
Legislation helps to some extent, yes.
Okay, what do we have to legislate?
Yes, for example, yes, a requirement, such as we have in Bhutan, that a certain percentage of the country must remain under forest cover for all times to come.
Okay.
Yes. This this is a tall order. Not everybody might buy into it, but we cannot have concrete cities. They do not give us oxygen, but the forest does, the trees do. So what life requires, not only to survive, but to flourish, is given by Mother Earth, planet Earth, our natural environment. So everybody has to understand that it is not for the sake of planet Earth alone, but for the sake of life, human life, more particularly, that we have to be mindful. So very conscious, mindful and responsible policy that requires that a certain percentage of the country remain under forest cover. That will be important. And for example, in Bhutan, we have also decided that Bhutan will remain a net carbon sink for all times to come. So the ability to absorb emission more than we actually emit. And some of the countries aren't doing that, so they emit more emission, they emit more carbon dioxide and release it into the atmosphere, affecting all kinds of life forms. Whereas, in fact, we have decided as a policy that we will remain a net carbon sink for all times to come. And of course, if at a national level, collective level, things work, nothing like it, because everybody has a stake in the environment. But sometimes reforms and good initiatives can begin from the margin, yes, like yours, from the periphery. If you cannot begin from the middle, we can begin from the margins, from the periphery, from the sides. So doing, for example, what you're doing, if you cannot bring about a big change starting right in the middle, I think sometimes very effective and meaningful, significant changes happen from the periphery. And I think maybe more individuals coming together and doing what they can in their own communities, in their own little clubs, and as individuals from the periphery, from the middle, from the center. Yes, it will be the responsibility of the government at all levels but individuals and communities also doing their bit from the periphery would be extremely important. And of course, environment and human survival have a long-term goal, and we have to prepare the future generations. Today we have our children in our schools, our young men and women in our colleges and universities. It will be important to approach through the educational system and prepare future leaders for responsible leadership, responsible citizenship, responsible inhabitants of our planet Earth. So, a small little community succeeding, the society succeeds, and the society succeeding, nations succeed. And if a good number of nations succeed, the world will succeed. A time will come when even deaf ears will become sensitive, and and then good policies, good initiatives, good approaches will be adopted. So I feel that at the national level, by the government and by groups who can work effectively from the periphery, from the outside in, yes, from the margins in, yes, excuse me, and most importantly, I feel that making our future leaders, future citizens, more conscious and more mindful and thoughtful in their relationship with planet Earth will go a very long way in ensuring the survival and the sustainability of our natural environment, our forests, our trees, as indeed our planet Earth. That's what I'm liking, yes.
And what are your main challenges and greatest success you experienced on your way, and how do you avoid or prevent the downfalls the Western society faces, like this value system collapse and this social media? What are you like?
I think the Western civilization has done a lot. The Western civilization, Western science and technology, Western awakening has done a lot in terms of bringing about tangible changes and improvements in the lives of people, not only for your own societies but also for the world. I think the enlightenment that happened in the West has been a tremendous gift to human thinking and human evolution, human development. But a time comes when even sublime ideas start facing challenges, and civilizations do face challenges, and it's important to look back at where things are going wrong and where we could correct them. So I believe just as we have benefited in our part of the world, in the East, from some of the achievements, innovations, discoveries that the Western civilization has brought about, perhaps at this point in time, the Western societies, the Western civilization could perhaps derive some sense of moderation and an attempt to look inward, because the journey outward is a lot easier than the journey inward. I think the East has been on a journey inward for a long time, and some of the awakenings, some of the milestones that the Eastern mind has achieved and crossed may be helpful not only to the Western civilization but also to the global community. While it is important to explore the world, to explore the material world and benefit from our successes, while it is important to explore the world, the outer world, the material world, and discover new frontiers, it is also important to explore the inner world and look at what is important in life after all. Is it the domination of the natural environment, the domination of the material world, or is it also necessary to discover some of the secrets of life? What is the goal of life after all? What is the goal of development? I think in the East we have been thinking for a long time about the ultimate purpose of life, the ultimate purpose of development. So going inward, as difficult as it is, may be a lot more important than going outward, discovering and trying to dominate the material world, the physical world. Because the mental world, the emotional world, the psychological world is a far greater continent, is a far greater universe than the material world. And I think that will take a lot of holding back, take a lot of moderation, take a lot to control the impulse to go beyond. So returning to the self, returning inward and looking inward, perhaps would be an important exercise at this point in time. And I think the world is doing a lot of that. The world today is a lot more reflective. It's a lot more reflective world. I think the world has become a little more humble, a little more respectful of relationships amongst the people, respectful of relationships amongst nations, and respectful of the relationship between us, the human beings, and our planet Earth. And that's crucial. It is so important. If the human race has to survive and flourish, this mutual respect between us and the planet Earth is going to be absolutely vital and crucial. There are no shortcuts, and there are no two ways about it. This is the relationship we have to respect.
You found your North Star, right? North Star. And what about like humanity North Star, or each nation has to find its own North Star? Like, can you just like the North Star concept in general? Like,
yes, indeed. We believe that just as we individuals, men, women, and children, need a dream, need a destination or a goal to guide our lives, so also societies and nations need a North Star. As you know, long ago, when we didn't have the precision equipment that we have today, like these, sailors and mariners lost on the wide open seas looked at the North Star. Because the North Star was always there. It was a point of reference. So they looked at the North Star and followed their direction to the safety of the port. Today, in this visionless world, we need the North Star much more urgently than we have ever needed it. All nations need their North Star to guide their people, to guide their governments, to guide succeeding generations of their citizens. The North Star is a metaphor for a vision, an all-embracing vision. So for Bhutan, His Majesty the Fourth King, Gyalpa Jigme Singh Wangchuk, identified the North Star when he gave us this holistic, harmonious and integrated sustainable development vision called gross national happiness. So it has remained our North Star over many years now.
We like this vision, like we even feel a part of it.
Oh, yes,
so what do we
indeed.
do now?
Yes, and yes, indeed. And this North Star is founded on the premise that all human beings, in all places, at all times, regardless of time and space, all human beings on the face of this earth, as indeed in all realms, sea, land, and the sky, every human being, regardless of color, race, nationality, religious, cultural orientation, political affiliation, all human beings, to the extent that we are human beings, have one common denominator. All of us have one common denominator. That is that we all want to be happy, regardless of where we live, which continent, which country, which little city or village, regardless of time and space. All human beings, on all parallels, on all meridians, in all countries, in all continents, want to be happy. And the search for happiness is a common goal for all of us, no matter where we are. So to that extent, this North Star is relevant to everybody, relevant to all human beings, whether people are in Yokohama or in Mongolia or in Egypt or right here in Vilnius, Lithuania, wherever we live in the world, whichever time, and whatever our preoccupations, each one of us, as indeed each nation, needs a North Star. And all of us have a stake in the North Star. Where we are is immaterial. How we are is immaterial. How we look is immaterial.
And I got really inspired when I watched on TEDx your Prime Minister speech, where he was talking about this global vision. It's like he was like going beyond borders of Bhutan. He was talking about Bhutan for not only Bhutan for life, but about going like beyond borders and go like Earth for life.
Oh, yes.
And he was talking about mobilizing like global leadership, resources, talents, influence, and like setting plans like and just go like wider.
Oh yes, indeed. Gross national happiness. Gross national happiness as
It's global vision.
yes,
You know, it's
as gross national happiness began in the vision of a Yankee, but it is all-encompassing. It is a vision that embraces all humanity. It embraces the whole world. It embraces all mankind, all countries, all mankind. So even though it may have begun as gross national happiness, it could actually be gross international happiness, because everybody has a stake in happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. So even though we do not advise anybody to follow Bhutan's vision, but we believe that this vision has relevance and appeal as well as power to affect people and nations all around the world. So that's why I believe that a lot of people around the world feel that Bhutan's development vision is relevant to their countries, to their societies. As a matter of fact, many countries, many governments have actually already adopted quite a few of the principles of gross national happiness in their policies. And today, pursuit of happiness has also been endorsed and championed by the global community. Bhutan proposed to the United Nations General Assembly in 2011 to make happiness as one of the Millennium Development Goals. So, Millennium Development Goals, as you know, has 8 elements. There are 8 goals called the Millennium Development Goals, and Bhutan proposed that we could have one more goal, a 9th goal. So, pursuit of happiness was proposed as the 9th self-standing Millennium Development Goal, and all the countries, 293 of them present, voted and endorsed Bhutan's proposal without a single dissenting voice. So that's why Bhutan actually was invited by the then Secretary General of the UN General Assembly, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, to hold a high-level meeting at the UN headquarters in New York, which we did on 2nd April 2012. And to this meeting came over 800 delegates representing heads of states, heads of governments, politicians, statesmen, economists, social workers, activists, youth volunteers, people from all walks of life. From then on, this idea of happiness as a common goal to be pursued by countries in their own ways has become much more popular. And just a few days ago, we celebrated the International Day of Happiness, March the 20th.
March 20th?
Yes, indeed. So,
And we have Earth Day. We have Earth Day. Earth Day.
yeah, we do also. Yes.
I also have.
Oh, wonderful. So you see, the global community is coming together. So this is good news. And oh, yes, indeed. So there's a lot happening around the world. There have been a lot of international conferences on gross national happiness, together with many happening in Bhutan itself. So I think this vision, this North Star, everybody can look up to the North Star, not only from Bhutan but from all over the world. So it is the North Star that speaks for the deep yearning of the human heart, that speaks to the most passionate desire of human beings across time and space to be happy. So this is a North Star that shines for everybody and not only for Bhutan.
And what's the best way to learn from it? Like how do we do it? How can we learn like more about your policy and what you do? So we can also just.
I think we cannot replicate everything in totality. Just as individuals have to find their own way to happiness, so also societies and nations should also identify a worthwhile, powerful North Star. And certainly what Bhutan is doing could be a kind of an example. So for example, in our case, we believe that it is important to bring about equity, socio-economic development on an equitable basis, balanced basis, because a lot of unhappiness in the world today comes from inequity, perceived or real sense of inequity, that opportunities are not equitably shared, that development benefits do not come to everybody in an equitable manner. So governments do have to ensure that development opportunities come to people across the society equitably. We are not talking about equally, but equitably, in a fair, just manner. How can we do that? Otherwise, we believe that in many parts of the world, 1% of the population controls about 80% of the wealth of the countries, and 99% controls just about 80%. So just about 20%, and it's very unfair. So, of course, individual enterprise, individual initiative must be celebrated, but social equity, social justice is very important as well. So how can legislation, how can governance bring about some sense of social equity, economic equity? Everybody feeling that they have a share in the success of the country. They have a share in the benefits that accrue from development, that they belong together and that they are not isolated or excluded. And of course, for us, culture has been very important. Culture is so important. I was talking to the children and students and also my audience in different parts here about how important it is to preserve our culture. In some societies, it is not seen as being very relevant, but for Bhutan, culture remains, has been and will always be an extremely important contributor to our sense of happiness. And of course, certainly, conservation of the natural environment, our environment is a very big reason for our happiness. And I think that's something that everybody can do all over the world. Yes. So here certainly, because if we were to face a time when all the trees are gone, when all the forest is gone, you can imagine life becomes really unlivable. So that's why to bring people on board, to bring more and more people on board, to educate our youth through the education system, through our homes, through our communities, through our institutions, public as well as private, is so very important. And of course, ensuring good governance is so very important. Governance, because governance cuts across.
What is good governance? Good
governance, yes, responsible, sensitive governance. Governance is an instrument of service, yes, because there's so much at stake, So if governance is responsible and mindful, then perhaps we can expect that they will make good policies, they will take care of the environment, yes, they will try to bring about equity and fairness in economic and social development, and of course also take care of all the important elements that make the society happy and also people who succeed and experience a sense of well-being.
Is there any regulations of this social internet
Social media, impact of social media. Patikslinkit klausimą.
Ar yra, kažkaip tai Butane ribojama ta interneto, nežinau, kažkaip.
Internetas.
Turinys interneto, ne?
Ta prasme, jau, tas papuolimas, pats visos tos... Aš noriu jo, ta prasme, nuo tos įtakos, kaip yra kažkaip...
Nuo plovimo, ne?
Jo.
The question... Išversite?
Ne.
We would like to ask if there's any regulation of internet, of the contents of social media in Bhutan. Because there's a lot of greenwashing, brainwashing, all sorts of washing and misinformation currently in the media.
Yes, indeed. Internet and television came to Bhutan in the last year of the last century, 1999 to be precise. So it's just about 20 years, 2 decades since we've had the internet and television. But I think what has happened is that the Bhutanese people have caught on very fast. And today a lot of, especially young people, are very smart and tech savvy. And in many ways, Bhutan is an extremely interesting example of a kind of a balance between tradition and modernity. Many people might feel that Bhutan may be a kind of a dream world, a Shangri-La but it's a real country. Bhutan is a real country of real people. It's a geographical entity. What we're trying to do is keep some of the good things that we have inherited over the years through our tradition, culture, and heritage, but at the same time remain open-minded. Yes, open-minded, and forward-looking. Bhutan is not a country that is stuck up in a time war. It is a forward-looking, progressive, dynamic country. So while we have preserved and will continue preserving some of the good elements of our tradition and culture, at the same time we would like to benefit from innovation, from science and technology. The internet and television are part of the technological breakthroughs that the human race has made possible, and certainly we have benefited from the internet and from technology, but we are also very concerned about some of the downsides, some of the negative influences that come together with the internet.
How do you keep immunity from that?
We do not legislate as such. We do not have a law as such that controls content. However, we have policies, we have norms, we have expectations that come through different agencies of the government, and while we feel at times that having a legislation to control content would be useful, but at the same time, whether it is right is the question. So what we feel is that there ought to be a lot of self-regulation, self-censorship, and we have regular programs dedicated to media literacy, how to use content, how to distinguish between good and bad content, how to filter bad and negative content. So we have regular programs across the country, especially through the education system, to educate people on the proper use of content.
Is it a part of your official education system, the media literacy? And
oh yes, it's we teach it through our civic education program. So we have a civic or citizenship education program. So through that, and even otherwise, civic education. Yes. So how to be responsible as a user of media, how to be a responsible citizen, so that media doesn't overtake you. People should be users of media and not used by media. So that's important. So human beings create the media, and it should not be Frankenstein. Yes, it would be too dangerous if we are sucked away, if we are consumed by media. Human beings should be consumers of media, users of media, and not be consumed or swallowed by media. Human beings have to preserve the sanctity of who they are as human beings, the sanctity of life, the sanctity of the human person. But if everything is taken over by the media, then it will be a kind of a great compromise on that sanctity of human beings. So while we do not have a law as such to control or ban media content, but we have a very conscious and regular programs to educate people on media literacy.
Čia buvo klausimas, aš tik žodžiu, Darius užklausė. Gal bandysime tada išsamiai išversti iki galo. Kaip padeda atskirti vaikams gėrimą nuo tiesos, padeda atskirti žodį.
Distinguish. So how do you educate your children, your future generations, to distinguish between what's worthy and what's unworthy, between good and bad?
Because here we don't know that.
Oh, that is part of the education, If education means anything, it has to be an ability to distinguish between good and bad, to distinguish between true and false, and right and wrong. And if education doesn't do that, we are not providing good education. So it has to start. There's the fundamental basis of education, to be able to distinguish between what is right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. That's so very important. Yes. So it is part of the curriculum. We teach it in regular classes, but at the same time, it ought to be a collective responsibility, because while there's a lot of good that comes through media, through the internet, but there is also so much of junk, whether anything is worth sharing. Is anything good? Is anything useful? Is anything true? So I think these are things that the ability to distinguish between good and bad content gives people tremendous power, and it is this power that we have to enhance, that we have to broaden, we have to increase, and how we do it, I believe it depends upon how imaginative, how resourceful the teacher is in the class.
Which is sometimes a
I have
problem.
a question
Yeah.
concerning leadership.
Yeah.
So Bhutan has less than 1 million people.
Yeah.
And what is the ratio of leaders in the country?
Readers.
Leaders.
Oh, ratio is difficult to really identify. Who is a leader? Everybody is a leader in a way, isn't it? So, in our own ways. But we have His Majesty the King. His Majesty the King is the head of state. Till 2007, His Majesty the King was the head of state as well as the head of government. He was the real executive. But after the parliamentary elections, after the democratic elections that we had for the first time on a nationwide basis in 2008, the head of the government is the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister, together with his cabinet, or her cabinet, does the day-to-day management, running of the country. And we have 10 ministries, each having a minister, and departments under the ministries. So we have the central government with His Majesty the King as head of state, and the Prime Minister as the head of the government. But Bhutan is divided into 20 districts. Each district has a governor. We call this person Zangda, governor. And the district is again further divided into several dunghaks, sub-districts. And the sub-district is divided by a dungpa, or a sub-district head. And below that there is still further down at the block level, there is the head of the block and head of the village. So the village is the first unit of the country. So the village head all the way up to His Majesty the King. And of course, when we talk about leadership, we have the civil service in the country, the Royal Civil Service, that trains the bureaucrats, the civil servants, and the head of the bureaucracy is the secretary to the government, secretary. So the Royal Civil Service identifies people who have the potential to be leaders, who have the potential to be secretaries, and ultimately the royal assent is given by His Majesty the King to formalize the appointment of the secretaries. And of course we have the judiciary. The judiciary is independent. So we have the head of government, executive, the Prime Minister, the head of the legislature is the Speaker, and the head of the judiciary is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So if you're talking about leadership, these are the ways in which leadership is divided. And of course, if you're talking about home, normally, yes, in some parts it is the mother who has more authority. In other parts of the country, the father who has more authority, or to the uncle. So the uncle or the mother or the father or the elder brother may assume position of leadership. and we have our institutions having their own leadership. So I don't know whether this is the way to explain. So I don't know whether you meant.
I wanted one more specific answer. How many people in the highest level?
Highest level. If you're talking about the highest level, if you're looking at the Prime Minister is one item, and there are 10 ministers, and 10 ministries have one secretary each, so 10 secretaries. And below the secretary there are also director generals. So yes, and of course directors and the zangdars, district heads, and the heads of the judiciary. So they would be, yes, at the very top level. Yes, if you count all these, some 100 people at the very high level. So.
And I have one more question regarding authority. In our westernized society, this authority is very messed up. Like pop stars, like showbiz stars, like sportsmen, like other role models for the youth.
Yeah.
And whom do your youth admire and follow, and how do you set up role models for younger generation?
Yeah, for our younger generation, the supreme star or idol is His Majesty the King. Yes, His Majesty is young, and very charismatic, and he is called the People's King. He is the People's King, and he travels across the country, meeting people and listening to them, trying to solve their problems. So he's very close to the people. So a lot of young people, yes, look up to the king as a true role model. A wonderful family man, a wonderful head of state, a great human being. So, but of course, young people have their own sport stars, their own film stars. Yes, I won't be able to mention who they are, but certainly yes, we have quite a few examples, I'm sure, for them from the Western, shall we say, movie industry, yes, and quite a lot from the Indian, Hindi movies. Some of our young people are also quite open to the ideas of and looking at some of the Korean examples. So there are as young people all over the world, they want to explore. So, yes, who is doing what and in which field. So yes.
I have a question. Since we're talking about governance, earlier in our conversation you mentioned that governance has to do with servitude. Could you elaborate?
Not servitude, service.
Service.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that, on the position from which a person in government approaches the affairs and responsibilities?
Governance is an act of faith. It's trust. It's trust. People elect leaders and public figures. If somebody is elected to a public office, it is based on trust that this person understands the country, understands the aspirations of the people, understands what the future looks like, and what the people need. So it is not election to a position of power, but election to a position of service, because you have more opportunities, more space to be available, and you have authority. So governance ought to be an instrument of service. It ought to be able to make people's lives better, bring about positive change, because government has power, and that power has got to be used to bring about improvement, to bring about positive change, to build goodwill, to build positive energy. This is important. Otherwise, governments could soon become, in fact, very irrelevant if they do not connect with the people, if they do not understand the aspirations of the people and the broad issues the country faces, including the environment, including economy, foreign relations, the need to inspire young people for the future. So governance is more than a function of day-to-day administration, maintenance of law and order, which are important. But once you are elected to government, a public official ought to see himself or herself as a servant of the people. So it is for service. So governance at the end of the day becomes relevant through service. Yes.
Is it possible that protection of nature will help economy of the country? Or it's contradiction?
How to do it?
I think there is no contradiction. If we protect the environment, it has a lot of benefits to the people. If environment suffers, it has implications on people's livelihood. Some people could be made homeless because of development activities. People who live near or in the middle of a natural environment, deriving their livelihood from the bounties of nature. So for economic gain, if forest is cleared and roads are built, for example, complexes come up, people may be removed and they suffer economically. They will be homeless. And every new activity that they have to carry out to secure their livelihood, in fact, means that economy is involved. So if people are allowed to remain where they are and maintain that relationship with the natural environment, that helps livelihood. And also, if the natural environment is disturbed, there could be consequences as serious as climate change, global warming. And global warming and climate change have huge economic costs, apart from material costs, financial cost. So disturbance of the ecology of the environment would come at a great human cost as well as economic material cost. It also comes at a great cost to the earth, because for example, human survival, environment is supposed to, or forest, natural environment is supposed to hold water, vital precious water. It's supposed to be a producer of clean oxygen that's important for life. So if the natural environment is disturbed, I think the quality of life suffers, the quality of the environment itself suffers, livelihood suffers, and in fact overall cost to the economy, overall cost to the society, even political cost would be very high. So I feel that there is no contradiction between preservation and development, preservation and economic development, but the two could support each other, balance each other. How much of a development to bring about mindfully? How much development is good enough? How much development contributes to human well-being, societal well-being? So I think it is not so much of a very dogmatic, orthodox approach to preserve and conserve without being pragmatic, intelligent, but at the same time to be mindful of how human activity and economic activity can affect the environment. So I feel that while on the surface economic development and conservation might look contradictory, they do not have to be. They can balance each other. How can we in a way find the middle path? But more with the environment succeeding, more planet Earth succeeding. So I think in the long run, the benefits of conservation are going to be far greater, because planet Earth has to be there for succeeding generations, and economic activity, economic prosperity could be time bound, it could be limited. However rich a person may be, it could finish in one generation. That wealth, that riches, goods and services could finish in one lifetime, in one generation. So in the short term, it could be seen that if we do not use what is available around, it is not economically intelligent, economically smart. But being economically smart could be environmentally very unwise. So I think the important thing would be to balance between the integrity of planet Earth and economic sustainability. So indeed, they do not need to be seen as contradictory, but supporting each other. Yes, some of the very wise economic policies could actually help the environment, whereas unwise and uninformed economic policies could be very harmful.
And what about your tourism strategy? You have some restrictions, and what is your vision for
Yeah, tourism is a very tempting sector. For Bhutan, for a long time, tourist arrivals were highly restricted. But now we are opening up, because tourism is also important to bring in some revenue for development.
And why was it restricted in the first place?
Yeah, Bhutan is only so big. Bhutan is only so big, and our population is only so big. So we are very small, and it was important for us to see as to how many tourists a year could Bhutan reasonably accept and absorb. So we had to look at our absorptive capacity. Was it going to affect our culture? Was it going to affect our society? Was it going to affect our system broadly? So we had to look at not only economic gain, not only revenue. If we had opened up, I'm sure economically we would have done very well, because people want to come to Bhutan. But economic gain again was not it was an important consideration, but not the dominant consideration. The dominant consideration was the integrity of our culture, the integrity of our society, and the fact that it is important for us to open up very, very slowly, gradually, and wisely. And that's what we're going to do.
Can I ask for what's your personal day routine? Or something in your personal day routine that helps you to stay positive and calm and to get rid of the stress? Something like
That's a good one.
I have to say that we Bhutanese people are also real people, flesh and blood. Yes, flesh and blood. Yes, so we are born, we grow old, we die. So we get sick. We have our hopes and dreams. We have our fears and anxieties. So we are like people everywhere else. But Peace is also a condition of one's attitude. I think it depends upon how we look at the world, how we look at people, how we look at life. Life is only so long. Life is only so long. We don't live forever. Life is very precious. And there are so many good things in life that we can't do all of them. We don't have enough time for that. And I think a positive attitude, a sense of acceptance of the goodness of the world, the beauty of life, and the joy of being a human being, the celebration of life as a very precious gift. I think these are things that are valuable to me, that are precious to me. I have my limitations, I have my weaknesses, my frailties. I'm far from being perfect, but I find joy, in relationships, in fellowship with other human beings. I'm so happy to be able to meet all of you. You give me extra energy, you give me hope, you're doing so well. So, I think it is basically an attitude of mine. I could be happier, yes, but I think there are so many good things that have come to my life. For example, coming to Lithuania, I've received so much of love and affection and care. My life has been blessed by the blessings of your land, by the blessings of your people, by your environment. And there's so many positive things here. I find those positive things deeply, deeply enriching. And wherever I travel, I try to look for those positive elements. And they make my life that much more beautiful. I'm so grateful to my colleagues, my hosts here, the people of Lithuania, the people of Vilnius, that you have opened your doors and your hearts to me. I've traveled around quite a bit here, and wherever I've been, I've received so much of joy and cheerfulness. This is so very important. And all of you, yes, in your own lives, you are not living your own life as such, but you're living your life on behalf of something bigger, something greater, something that helps your people and your children to look to the future with hope, and together with your civic bodies, your non-governmental organizations, with your government, with your fellow citizens, I'm sure you will do even better. I find your country very green. There's a lot of positive energy here, a lot of goodwill. This you cannot quantify. You cannot quantify. You cannot measure it. But you feel it. You feel it. And I think that's important. You cannot put it in economic terms or in terms of euros. But this is very precious. You have a history dating back to so many centuries. You have your culture, your language, your literature, your art and architecture, songs and music, your dance, sports, games, your customs, your costumes, all this together, your own national memories, so very important. And I think there's so much here. And it is my hope that your efforts, your initiative, your project finds a greater appreciation, and that you find greater success in your efforts. And it is my wish that a time come when everybody becomes environmentally so conscious that your project becomes irrelevant. That is not needed anymore. That would be your greatest success.
That's the goal.
Yes. Yes.
That's the goal.
Yes. So, yes, a time when, yes, everybody is so conscious and so thoughtful in their own leadership roles as custodians and trustees of planet Earth, that individuals and groups like yours become, in fact, they will have served their purpose, and that there's this total consciousness that assumes great energy to propel your society forward, a very bright future. So I wish all of you the very best, and also your people in your country and our world the very best.
Yeah, this is so great that all these green communities connect, you know, and the world is really global now.
Oh yes,
in a
indeed,
good
so
way,
very
you know?
good. Yes, absolutely, yes. So.
Like you connect with this environmentally and
Oh
socially,
yes,
like
yes, indeed.
conscious people.
There's so much to do, you know. There's so much to do, and life is only so long. So that's why we have to do what we can now. Yes. There's no perfect moment. Now is the moment. Yes.
And it's very important for us that, like, this Bhutan as an example, as a role model exists, because it like pushes
Gives
us to extra energy, and because it's not some like idealistic like or something, it's not possible. Or
Gives the real feeling.
Yeah, it's like real. You bring this real feeling, you know.
We have our challenges. We have our challenges.
Of course.
Yes.
But it's a lot, you know.
Yes,
it's a lot. Where you
yes.
are, it's like huge for us. It's something like wow.
Yeah. As I said earlier on, you know, we have been very fortunate with our leadership. Our kings have been so wonderful. Yes, they've done such a good job. That's why we follow this North Star. You know, we do not know when we're going to get to the North Star, but we may never get there, you know, in 1 generation, in 2 generations, or in 3 generations, or never. But we all need a North Star to move in that direction, one step at a time. And just as the flower by the windowsill looks to the sun for nourishment, we should look to this North Star for nourishment for our societies, for our lives. So that's why this North Star is our common gift, is our common heritage. It belongs to all of us. Yes, not only to the Bhutanese and to Bhutan. Yes. I wish you all much happiness. Yes, sir, please.
Can I ask one question? I'm glad we're talking about leadership again. Do you have corruption problem? So you have so many institutions.
No country in the world is free from corruption. No country. But it is, you know, Bhutan is small. So, yes, so as a small society, we know almost everybody, right? We know almost everybody. So, it's quite easy to find out who is doing what. So, yes. So, yeah. So, there are a lot of these internal controls. But we have a very effective anti-corruption commission. We have these constitutional bodies. The anti-corruption commission is very strong there. We have the National Audit Authority. We have the Royal Civil Service Commission. And we have our very effective judicial system. So there are a lot of checks and balances. And the media is quite inquisitive. So, yes, and these have helped. So, but it would be wrong to say that there's absolutely no corruption. So, there will be some elements of corruption here and there. Yes.
So, thank you.
Wow.
It's a very long interview. I don't know in what way is it going to appear?
We will.
Is it a
We
conversation?
will distribute it in the social media. We have like
We have
large
also
audience.
like different groups and social media, a page. We will make as we will cut and
Because
make
we
it
are
as a
mostly like
video.
we connected all these environmental conscious people all around Lithuania. So it's
Oh,
like a
very
net. We
good.
created
Yeah,
like
we
a
created
web,
network.
like a net. So we exchange
We've
what's happening with the
already-
policy, what happened
already with the
before,
communities.
like what happened, what we need to adapt, and we spread the
We do
idea all
we
ecological
spread, like we do
communities.
this all. So we try to spread the message.
Oh, look what Bhutan does, and that's what we did, and maybe we sėti sėklas būtent
We saw the seeds.
We saw the seeds, like into the minds and hearts, and and that's what we want to do with your message. Like we want to like spread the like seed it.
I hope I didn't say anything wrong.
We will listen one more time, maybe.
I don't want to offend anybody.
No,
I don't want to touch very tender veins here and there.
Yes.
Please check those, because it will not help you. It will not help me. It will not help your cause. If there is anything sensitive that offends people, for example, your local government or
No. Here we're very
yes, so that is, and please convey my good wishes to your network, to your friends. Yes, to your fraternity. Yes, to your colleagues. So.
But like Darius, I know like he participates in Butano, right?
Oh, wonderful! So, and of course, you carry a very powerful message for the world and for the planet. So, yes, absolutely certain that everything will be fine. So all the best.
So we will do one big picture, one photo
okay,
with you.
okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
A
So.
big picture and then big hugs and bye.